out my window.
I'd like to welcome everyone. It's a great turnout, and thank you all very much for coming. And before we get started, I'd like to especially thank two people. I know the guest of honor will be getting lots of attention this evening, but I want to point out my sister Linda for putting this all together. She really worked very hard at this. It was her idea, thank you. And then the second very special person this evening is Thelma for being such a great mother and grandmother and wife. Thank you. Okay, if I can get the children of Irving and Thelma to stand. I appreciate that, please. Back there. Thank you. Okay. With the grandchildren of Irving and Thelma, please stand. Good. That's good. And your names.
At 80, he's seen a lot, experienced a lot. He joins clubs and is involved excessively to do good in the world. And he's made the world a better place. In March of 1965, he was in Alabama. It was cold, raining, and very uncomfortable. If you go on Google or YouTube and search civil rights, you'll see some very graphic and disturbing pictures of a terrible time in American history. He was there. It was never separate but equal for blacks. It was stressful and powerful to watch the violence on TV. It was shameful. He was there. He could have stayed home and played with his 4 children and gone to work in San Francisco schools like he did every day, but he heard something most people didn't, and he needed to go. He was there. Irv went to Alabama and marched for voting rights for blacks. He'll tell you the story because he was there. He was one of 3,000 marchers. He didn't do it to be thanked. He went on this march and risked his life because it was the right thing to do. And in a few moments, he'll tell you about that journey.
You know my dad, but you probably don't know the Irv who changed history. Because of him, we are installing our first, and hopefully not our last, black president. Because of him, maybe there will truly be equal rights for gays. We hope so. While my dad was marching, I remember an assembly held at my junior high school. 2 or 3 men were on the stage talking about that very march. I raised my hand. I told them what my dad was doing and asked what they thought he would accomplish. I don't remember the answer, but I remember the stunned look on their faces because they weren't expecting a question like that. I was so proud. I remember one of my dad's closest friends from Pacifica would no longer talk to him because he did not believe that what my dad had done was right. But I knew it was right. I was friends with his daughter, but they were instantly out of our lives. My dad was a public school teacher for 37 years in San Francisco, so he happens to be a very good speaker. He has done loads of volunteer work, from feeding the homeless to working at our temple to the Lions Club where he has served as president, so he knows how to relate events very well, and he will do so today. He and Thelma enjoy elder hostel vacations, theater productions, and many other activities. My dad still swims and goes for walks almost every day, so he will stand here and tell you his very moving story. Although it's a mere 1 week out of a very long life of 80 years, marching for civil rights in Alabama some 43 years ago had a profound impact on my dad. What he did changed the world. It's hard to get through this story without a lot of emotion and pride. You will know Irv differently, and you will be proud of what he did for you and for me and the world. You will feel as if you were there. Back to you.
We'd like to welcome our dad, Irv Katuna, to the podium to share and preserve his outstanding legacy. We love you, Dad.
There were many other people who were in the march who
in the civil rights struggles and everything. Some of them died. I didn't die. Some of them were injured. I was not injured. As a matter of fact, the way this whole thing was set up, and the introduction kind of set the framework for me. At the time that this did begin for me, there was a lot of publicity in the newspapers and so on of the bloody violence. Well, you knew what happened on the bridge when the civil rights marchers in Alabama and Selma tried to cross the bridge. They were trying to go from Selma, which is a small town, to Montgomery, which is the capital of the state of Alabama. They just wanted to go and present a petition to the governor, and they were stopped over that bridge, over the Pettus Bridge, and there were graphic pictures of it, and influenced a lot of people, because this had gone on for a long time. This type of thing had gone on for a long time, but it was captured in the newspapers. And so I had seen that kind of thing, and it was very upsetting to me because I had been working for 14 years in a junior high school in the Fillmore district, in the ghetto district of San Francisco, and it was a largely all-black school. So most of my associations, my professional associations, were with black students, with black teachers, with black counselors, and I was part of the community. I used to go around to meetings at night and give presentations, tell them what was going on at the school. As I was a teacher, I was a counselor, I was a curriculum assistant, and I knew that what was happening in Selma and Alabama and in other parts of the world was just very dangerous for America. It was very destructive of America. You know, that people I see, for example, the current Secretary of State goes around giving talks about how wonderful our reputation is in the world. Well, how was it at that time? How was it at that time where 10% of the population was not allowed to vote? And how could that have come about, actually? Well, it's kind of hard to understand it, except that the people in the South, it's a legacy coming out of slavery. The Congress of the United States was discussed how this country would be set up, would be first set up. And at that time, they could have eliminated slavery completely, but they couldn't do it because it was an economic necessity. A lot of people in the South needed slaves. So what they did, it was compromised. They outlawed slavery, the importation of slavery. The Constitution of the United States outlawed further importation of slavery, but where it was being held now continued to be legal. So if you were a slave owner in America and you had slaves, and they would have children, and their children would grow up and they would have children, you could still maintain that system. That's what went on. That's how America was started, and gave rise to all of these problems, really, that we have. Because most of the other industrialized, educated nations of the world had outlawed slavery before, long before, like England. There was no slavery in a major country in the world at that time, except for the United States. Canada never had it. England had outlawed it. You know, where did it exist? In America. And so, it led up to the Civil War. Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, all the other influences and everything. And then Abraham Lincoln coming with the Civil War, largely over the idea of slavery as an economic issue and everything. And then coming out of that, so the blacks were liberated, first in 1863 and then 1865. But the whites in the South, who were racists, were still determined to maintain the system, pretty much the way it was. So what they did was, they had different laws that were passed to keep blacks from voting. Even though they had the legal right to vote, they were kept from doing that. First, they would threaten them. First, you had the Ku Klux Klan starting up, going around. Any blacks who would dare to go to a poll during an election were maybe hung from a tree, or mistreated physically in some very serious way, as a lesson to blacks not to do that in the future. Then, when that kind of abated a little bit because of pressure from the federal government, then they would have things like poll taxes. All right, you're black, you want to vote, you're an American citizen, well, go ahead. It's going to cost you $10. Now, the wage maybe was $2 a day for black people who were working, and they'll charge you $10 to vote. Well,